Kia ora, everybody. Welcome to Merging to Main. Today we're looking at productizing the internal developer platform. We've got an amazing lineup of guests. So I'm going to take a quick second, let everyone introduce themselves, kind of where they come from, what they do in their day-to-day. And I'll kick that off with Scott.
Thanks, sir. I'm Scott Hiland. I am a platform director for Hunter Strategy. I come from a history with Pivotal and VMware and a recent exit from Broadcom. And I've spent quite a bit of time in the federal space, the defense space here in the United States, helping build platforms and helping establish better developer experience and better, time to value for our customers.
Fantastic. And Jordan, can you share with us?
Yeah, my name is Jordan Chernev, and I spent 13 years with Wayfair, and I'm currently with Zillow as of a few months ago. Similar role and capacity in both organizations, platform engineering, building out as a practice, obviously accelerating developer experiences, getting shorter time to market for new products, new features, bugs, fixes, reducing time for getting to market, that type of thing.
Fantastic.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Bartek Antoniak. I'm based in Poland. By the way, it's quite hot as well here. I'm head of cloud engineering. I come from professional services business, and it's been over 8 years where I was involved in various different platform engineering initiatives, acting in various different roles, from individual contributor to engineering manager, and then heading up entire department.
Awesome. All right, Steve, you're up.
Hey, everyone. My name's Steve. I work at Octopus Deploy. I've been doing software delivery for a couple of decades now in regulated industries, healthcare, e-commerce. And I'm kind of like a gap filler, like polyfiller. So on the teams I've been in, I do the stuff that other people aren't too interested in doing, which means I've touched on a lot of things that tend to land inside internal developer platforms or DevOps, which I think is probably similar to a lot of folks on the call here today. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Brilliant, thank you all. And for those who are watching on YouTube and may not know my voice, I'm Paul. I run the support team around the CodeFresh product, which is part of Octopus. So for lots of folk who are running or involved in the internal developer teams, they'll send us questions about when things break or what the best practices are. And one of the things that we've noticed is it'd be a really valuable conversation to know what success looks like for those teams. Not just about when a product's running well, but about if you're doing a developer platform well, what can we learn from each other where hopefully we can take some shortcuts or work more effectively and pick the best parts, what other organizations have achieved. So that being said, one of the easiest ways to dive into what a successful model looks like, and just throwing this out to our panel, what do you each see as the main indicator of success when it comes to these internal developer platforms or portals?
Jump right in.
Jump right in, absolutely.
All right. So main indicator of success is voluntary adoption.
Are not being forced to it.
Yeah, that's a big one. And by showing the value and giving them a reason to adopt it rather than it just coming down from a pointy-haired boss.
Fair enough. So the kind of organic growth where teams want to use your platform is better than the alternatives they can get hold of.
Yeah.
I would +1 that statement. Adoption is probably the biggest success indicator. Obviously, you want to measure the level of happiness or NPS for once they're on the platform. How do people and how do actually teams feel about using the tooling or the automation as a part of the golden or the paid paths? And obviously, you want to speak to those teams' respective product and stakeholders to see if they themselves actually see clearly visible acceleration from their end in terms of like, either driving business value or just like, overall team throughput or flow.
Brilliant. All right. So, Scott, you're saying about measuring adoption, and Jordan about even including NPS scores in terms of how your internal developers are finding the platform to use, which sounds like a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I'd add a couple of additional things into that mix as well. I think for me, probably the most important thing to measure will be everyone's got a motivation for adopting a platform or spending money on it or allocating developers. And we've heard things like from the community about developers burning out on the complexity of their infrastructure and their systems. And there's some other reasons as well that we're hearing. So it kind of feels like we should probably measure that as well if we can, so that we know that the platform succeeded in reducing this developer burnout. Otherwise, we haven't solved the problem that caused us to adopt it in the first place. And that might not be the reason you're adopting platform engineering. And if not, then you should be measuring whatever that reason is.
And I would second all of that. And even in addition to that, I would say solving the right problems for the right people, and especially platform engineering is about solving problems at scale. So it's basically a way that we can find some common problems for the majority of people within the organization and do it effectively. So the impact is bigger than just a single team. But the adoption is key metric. No argue with that.
Brilliant. All right, great thoughts. We're solving things at scale. People are happy about the work that we're doing. We're measuring that, and people are using our platform rather than going and making their own thing. This sounds like a really good model to aspire to. So that being said, this sounds like a role that's reasonably complicated in a team that works across the whole business, as Jordan was saying, to align with what business success looks like. So what do you need if you're the pointy-head boss, as Scott was saying, and you want to get an internal developer platform going, or you're in the role where you're running the team? What is it you need from the business to make this a success?
A charter, an agency to operate. And if you are that boss, the willingness to go and talk to your colleagues across all of those silos, those beautiful cylinders of excellence that we all know so well, and find out what it is they need, and then prioritize it. If we're talking about productizing a platform, then you're gonna have to prioritize some things ahead of others. And of course, that always takes into account the constraints as well as the sort of wants and needs of your developers and your end users. And I have pretty strong opinions on calling an internal developer portal a platform. I believe pretty strongly that the platform is not a platform until it's actually servicing end users. So if you just have Backstage, that's not really a platform. It is a super useful tool, a complicated one, but it is a super useful tool for speeding delivery of software securely, reliably, consistently. But until you actually take into account all of the other bits and pieces on the outside of it, your infrastructure, your ops support, things like that, you're not really going to get anywhere with regard to your end users. So anyway, I'll get off the soapbox. I warned you.
Oh, you're fine. That soapbox makes sense. I mean, from my perspective, I back up the CodeFresh product. And from Steve, he backs up the existing Octopus framework around Windows deployments and stuff. But neither one's marketed as an internal developer platform. There's a whole bunch of stuff other than just the tools you're using to make this work. I mean, as we've already heard, you've got to negotiate across the business silos. You've got to be actually engaging with the developers, measuring how happy they are, measuring their success. There's a whole bunch more than just, I'm going to deploy a tool. So in saying that, what else is in that whole bunch more? Because, I mean, we can talk about deploying tools all day long. We're experts at that. But what are the bits that people who might be aspiring to the role, or people who are in the role, what else do you need to make it work well?
The most important aspect is to develop a product mindset. This can be a little bit difficult, especially if you're somebody who has practiced the systems-oriented thinking for a very long period of time. One of the things that I do recommend for newer leaders or practitioners is whenever you go on a listening tour across your total addressable market, so you have to define what that is in the first place. Maybe it's number of business units, number of product teams. Make sure when you're going on that listening tour, you don't talk about technology at all. If somebody brings up technology, you sort of try to steer away from that conversation and don't necessarily talk about the technological bits and pieces. You try and understand each aspect of the specific customer journey that each of these, maybe end users or, I don't know, software practitioners, what are the actual things and tasks or jobs to be done or particular steps that they have to execute on as a part of their own day-to-day or delivery. Mapping that out and then sort of working backwards from hey, how long does each step take in terms of duration, distraction, cognitive load, and then sort of figuring out what is the actual biggest value for this particular customer profile in terms of reducing, I don't know, number of technologies to learn, distractions, allowing people to kind of enter flow state. Those are kind of the primary aspects. Once you have that laid out in terms of strategy, I tend to joke about that the actual technical work would be a lot easier because you'll be you focused on doing the right type of work, and it's going to become more of a flywheel over time. You're going to be able to attract more and more adoption, which then sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to have more people, more teams, you're going to get more internal funding. It sort of starts snowballing from there on.
I think another important aspect is to look holistically at what's possible, what not in the current organization, and build a platform that is piped into the existing technology and processes landscape, because it's often the case that bringing a new practice can be super costly. Training people, bringing a new technology that is not necessarily in line with the current technology strategy or level of expertise among developers. That's something we need to be very careful with.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, I've seen, I'm from New Zealand. We don't have a great base for our population of people who know Kubernetes. So I've seen a lot of accounts or cloud transformation projects where introducing Kubernetes is seen as a way to change how the whole business functions in this promised land of these quick, scalable deployments. And again, staffing here is a problem. Often those projects don't take off particularly well, but is this something you see in your workplace as well? Is Kubernetes seen as a new tool of any sort as solving the internal development problem or providing that portal or platform? Because I think, like Jordan was saying, is it's really a people problem, not a tool one. So how does that interface? If you've got say you're in the popular current marketplace and you've been told to provide a platform, you're doing cloud transformation, or you're in a large enterprise, at one end you've got Solaris VMs that are 20 years old, and the other you've got Kubernetes. How do you provide a pathway or a platform that works at scale and solves problems across that breadth?
I think the interesting thing. Oh, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I was going to say it depends a lot on the constraints. So if you've got a client, or if you yourself have a challenge where you need to run things on-prem, with Proxmox or Nutanix or something like that, or if you're able to take advantage of tooling available in any commercial IaaS, like those are things that are important to satisfy before you decide, hey, is commoditizing Kubernetes as part of my platform useful? And then the scale too. If you're never going to scale to a point where you need that kind of utility, maybe it's not. Maybe you need a lot of Docker run and not Kubernetes. It just would kind of depend on the organization and the scale that you were seeking. Anyway, back to you guys.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've heard a lot in conversations is that actually platforms tend to be something people look at because they've started adopting microservices, Kubernetes, and all of these things. And the developers are overwhelmed by the number of choices because there's flavors of everything. It's like there's not even a single choice when it comes to your configuration, because you can decide between, you're going to just go pure YAML, or is it a Helm chart, or is it something else? So we have this overwhelming list of things to choose from, and there's actually quite a lot of power in reducing that down. And I think the State of DevOps research has some interesting findings. It says that teams actually succeed really well when they can make a free selection, but from a list like that's already been like thought about in advance. So not like a completely free selection where you can use one version control provider, I'll use a different one, but like here's like some kind of unified decisions, and you can choose from them, so you can pick something that was going to work best for you. I think platforms can help in that area.
Yeah, blueprints and solutions are definitely kind of the holy grail that really starts accelerating the time to market for a lot of different product teams. So I'll plus on that. I think what I'm hearing from the rest of the folks on the panel is try to focus a lot on initial discovery, understand the actual market, understand the actual user personas, what are the problem statements, what are the actual outcomes, and then work backwards from that in terms of actual technical implementation.
That makes sense. So we're looking at kind of the end goal being this idea of golden pathways or blueprints, ways of kind of say to our developers internally, here's the three best options we've got, pick one of them. But to get there, if we're going to treat our platform as a product, it sounds like there's kind of like we call it a market research loop that goes on, or how do you calibrate what solutions you offer to your developers? How do you know what's actually a good pathway?
I think it's quite important to understand the current operating model in the company. So how developers actually work, what kind of tools they use. And it's often the case that platform is not a greenfield project. It usually emerges on top of existing blueprints or reference architecture or some automation components. And you just build on top of that another layer that is managed, efficient, everything is streamlined. And I think that's the answer.
I like that. Abstract the friction away by providing that layer of interface so that they don't have to deal with it. It's certainly the kind of thing that you run into where they already have tools that they're using, and either your tool needs to be a relatively seamless transition for them, or you need to consider the expenditure of political will to help shift them and to sell and to again, you're running a product. You want to attract people voluntarily and not say, hey, I've built this ivory tower, come check it out. You definitely want to work with them and not work for your own end goals.
Yeah, I think it's perfectly appropriate for a given platform practice to create a document. Let's call it a platform manifesto for a second, but it could very well be named something else, where you sort of outline the current components that make up the platform, from anywhere from compute to orchestration to storage. And then it's sort of allow the organization to kind of revisit those choices over time. Maybe there is a particular preference for a particular, I don't know, external vendor or a technology or a computational paradigm. You want to account for that, obviously, from a perspective of what serves the business needs the most. But then you can continuously refresh that and sort of provide the exposure to the actual community of this is actually what's being served to you under the hood. Yes, you're going to use abstraction layers to actually access those particular technologies, if you will, but effectively you can expect that this is what is being provided for you. And again, you can swap out components. Obviously, you want to make it seamless to most teams. So even if you're trying to make a hard pivot on something like compute, maybe you're shifting away from Mesos over to Kubernetes or whatever that is, you want to make sure that the friction of that migration is relatively small, if you will.
I think that ties in as well to what Matthew Skelton says on the minimum viable platform, which is if you captured those decisions that Jordan was just talking about on a wiki page and said, we have made this choice for these reasons, and we decided not to go with this choice for these reasons, that's already a huge piece of value, because now instead of that decision being repeated or reversed because we kind of forgot why we built that fence, so we just remove it, That's a really valuable thing, even if you don't get to the point where you've created APIs and portals and all these other things. So yeah, that's a +1 for that one.
You beat me to MVP. I almost said it. You beat me to it.
Right, yeah, underlining that, the value of recording your decision logic is also a good kind of bulwark to have if a new manager comes into play up and above the chain of command. If you've recorded about why you've chosen particular things in particular ways, it's a bit harder for someone to come in and suddenly, declare Kubernetes as the holy grail. Because we know from the work that I do and my team does that the effort to move to Kubernetes can be quite substantial, and managers like these grand declarations. So if you lay out your logic, as Steve was saying, even on a wiki page, it would be a very valuable document to have. The other aspects I want to pick up is I'm hearing a lot of conversation in the panel about like how much of an advisory role you would have if you're in the development or as a developer looking towards the team that provides the IDP. If you're hiring for that team, if you're running the internal development platform, what sort of skills does your team need? Are you looking at like senior or staff levels to provide this advice, or can you just have one good leader and a bunch of juniors to make it cheaper for the business?
I think a blend is appropriate, but you need folks who have got breadth and depth. As many times we ran into in deploys for customers, it's never the network, it's always the network, or it's never DNS, it's always DNS. And many times you'll have folks who have systems administration experience or development experience or DevOps experience, but may not have as much network and infrastructure experience as you would hope. And oftentimes those are the things that can really cripple a platform. And knowing that kind of stuff, at least having a couple of folks either embedded in the team or accessible to the team who are capable of handling infrastructure and network type questions as you build, as you architect, and as you iterate, really smooths things along. Plus, folks who are really good at understanding business needs and putting that into putting the technical needs into a context that folks making business decisions can understand really helps. So again, senior and mid folks tend to have more of those skills, but that doesn't mean that gifted junior folks can't develop them quickly.
I used to say we need software engineering mindset in infrastructure space. People who understand SDLC, software development lifecycle. They have at least a year or two track record in writing software, design, and operating this in production, optimizing, doing on-calls. So these people will be capable of understanding the cognitive load in engineering, how to optimize this. And another important skill is communication. So these people need to have collaborative nature, be proactive, be able to communicate, document everything. That's how you scale and distribute the knowledge in the platform space.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. We're looking at having some people, at least on the team, who have a lot of experience, preferably in software development, but also in networking and other deep and wide tech skills. And at least some people, maybe the same, maybe different, who can work with management, talk to developers, do the people side, because the people side is something we've strongly heard is really important. You've got to make sure that the platform you're building is actually attractive to developers and solving their problems. Yes, the next fun part to move into is what sort of business structures can obstruct this and which ones help it? And what sort of incentives make this easier? And what things will send it off the rails? And to begin, we've got a question from Ken, which kind of plays into this. Ken's asking about like which profiles in an organization should the capabilities of your IDP be given to? Like, can can everyone create or destroy things like a code repo or infrastructure? Or do you need a process where maybe you've got cloud operators and only they can do this, only they can push the button to change things in production? Like which, in your experience, which models, which incentives, which control processes help or hinder this whole process?
What's your scale? What's your
Let's
scale?
assume that we're talking about people who go to the fun ones, the enterprise customers who have some things on cutting edge and some things that are 40 years old they can't turn off.
They'll need ownership. Like you have to have somebody who owns the platform wholly, and then they're the ones who would then build the processes and the automation around making it frictionless to do those things, those technical tasks.
Yeah, the core example here is, yes, you can build it on your own if you are a software team, but not everybody will actually know or be a deep expert on security, especially in a public cloud provider. You want to have a team that has deep expertise to shift most of that work to the left and provide it as a core feature of the platform as a product that is internal to the rest of the team, as opposed to you having to sort of learn some of these very, very impacting business outcomes in a negative way on an individual or per team level.
I think in respect of the specific question, there's some interesting stuff in here to unpack. If your platform is sitting in front of terminal access or kubectl or virtual machine logins, and it provides like some kind of API or push button access to perform an operation, you're not really talking about giving this huge privileged access to people who are using the platform. They're actually doing something very controlled. So it should be opening those operations up to a wider audience. Otherwise, something's gone wrong. On the question around the governance, which is really interesting, if you're in an organization that says, for example, before you're allowed to create some infrastructure, it has to be rubber stamped by someone. This is something the platform can help take care of. It can manage that approval process instead of it being done on a clipboard and ink, right? We can make it easier. So now the developers don't have to go around to people's desks and beg for access or beg for something to be done. They can like request it, and the approval is like initially controlled by the platform and coordinated. And maybe later on, it's even automated. If it's like, if you're asking for a test environment in order to, for 1 week in order to test a branch of something you're experimenting on, it's automatically approved, for example.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're touching on something very important. You want to make sure if you're going down the path of that automation that you have full lifecycle automation. So effectively, it would be CRUD for provisioning, retirement, sunsetting, that type of thing. And obviously, yes, you want to provide a certain level of governance ownership that is sticky to a given team, can sort of like, persist and survive team merges, team splits, reorgs, sunsets of teams, that type of thing. It's actually, it looks like a very simple thing on the surface, but once you get down to like, governance and ownership, it sort of like, balloons up quite a bit in terms of complexity and implementation.
Brilliant. So some of what I'm hearing is that you need to have someone whose role is to own all this infrastructure and is checking that it's been created and destroyed properly. But the role of the platform is for that person to not sit there and push approve or deny buttons all day, but to scale the automation out so those things can happen, if it's non-production, automatically. And they're responsible for it, but they're not actually having to sit there and provision it or sit there and make sure it's someone's got on the phone and come to their desk and filled out a form, but that we can make it frictionless about this. So it doesn't take away the ownership, but you can take away the friction.
And it's that as needed too. Like you may not need to scale to a point where you have built a fully realized tool that does all of this for you, but having a single person or a couple of people who are capable of updating and managing the automation to do so, and then they're the ones that take the requests. I think that's okay too. It's perfectly reasonable to expect in an organization that's smaller that might be one of the things that, say, a growing infrastructure team could take on is platform management. But it wouldn't be the sort of thing where if it continues to grow, they're like, well, we're not going to hire any more people. We're not seeing any value. It's one of the things that's hardest for a platform team to do, is to show the value they bring about by eliminating friction. So measure now and forever. Like, start today. Don't wait.
That sounds like some hard-won political knowledge there. So in terms of showing the value of what the platform delivers, what do you measure? How do you show it?
Don't ask me. I don't know anything about that.
I guess we come back to our initial part of the conversation, what success looks like. If you're measuring these metrics, that's part of what would help. But if you're investing, say, you've got to invest, 2 or 3 weeks of labor to make a new feature happen. Is there a way, if you're running a IDP team, that you can show the worth of that feature over time? How do you justify or show that your team's doing productive work if you're running a platform or a portal?
I'll mention a strategy or a tactic that I have used with quite a lot of success. As a part of product outreach, you want to provide or write specific product use cases of teams using your platform internally. So try to think of, maybe the format is similar to what AWS does with reInvent. You have an actual customer who speaks on behalf of you as a provider or product developer, in terms of what is the value add that they personally saw. And obviously, given that this is a platform topic, you can confine it into the regular measurements that everybody needs. Hey, specific DORA metrics, maybe security incidents, maybe it's cost, maybe you tie it to SOI, SOO, maybe you tie it to cost optimization initiatives. So effectively, you're trying to portray and make sure that you write it for somebody who is the business audience. That's the most important part. Because once you write that artifact called that case study, you can start offering that case study to the actual business side stakeholders who are the one hop removed audience of your platform. And kind of the holy grail is, once you start having these business groups who talk to each other on the side, it's invisible to you and most of the rest of the organization, right? You want them to start sharing those product use cases with each other, which basically says, hey, our product team started using the platform. They saw these types of outcomes for specific parts of their applications or the software. Maybe you should try it too. Once you get into that level of exchange that is happening by using those particular artifacts, you start to win quite a bit in terms of investment from other areas that you don't necessarily see.
Yeah, well, that feeds into the product idea really well. You've got to be able to collect and share success stories, which is always something that some of us can leave to the last minute, but it has a lot of long-term worth.
And like Jordan said, talk to the business, the folks who have their hands on the budget are the ones who are going to help you determine the success of your platform. If you don't have their buy-in, if you can't prove the value of what you're doing, whether that's by helping the developers get X feature to market before our competitors, or by scaling in a specific way, or meeting the needs of moving to a different IaaS and creating savings in that way. Any way you can pull back a measure of the creation of value into the technical activities of your product team, if you can connect those dots, then that is the kind of measure of success that will keep your platform from going where platforms go to die, which is ultimately shared services. You want to stay out of a big bucket with no charge line. You want to make sure that you are a differentiated offering within your organization.
Basically, speaking the language of money is something that everyone will understand, right? And the issue is that some of these aspects are quite hard to quantify, right? For example, what's the money equivalent of increased time, speed up time to market, for example, or efficiency gain, how this translates to money. On the other hand, if we can measure onboarding time, lead time to production, cost of another technology integration that will be faced by multiple teams for the very first time, and this collectively adds and adds on top of that. So you really need economics of platform engineering and using the value of using the language of money, and especially around time savings equals developer time, and that's how you can really quantify most of these things. But it's not super easy.
I'd add on to that. I think I like the Monk metrics, which is the things we've been talking about. It's the market share, the onboarding time, I can't even remember what the other two are now. The net promoter score and the key customer metrics. The key customer metrics being contextual. But I think we also need to remember, and this is like, I'm a developer and I'm like, well, here's numbers. This is all very rational. I've got a graph. Actually, there's another side to this, which is that we're not necessarily dealing with like a fact-based decision-making process, right? We're like a little internal startup, and we are selling something to the business stakeholders that we hope they continue to invest in. So actually, we might have to go a little bit further outside of our comfort zone and read something like Selling the Invisible and work out how we can talk to the business in a language that's going to be more familiar to them, rather than it being like, is platform engineering working? I'll just run the test suite. All of the green ticks are there. It must be working. That's kind of how we think, right? But it's not necessarily how the business thinks. So we might need to just break out a little bit further and do some uncomfortable stuff.
I want to tack on one more fun one that I've seen used once. And it was a customer who tracked developer turnover from before and after the platform was made available to them. And they stopped losing developers after they instantiated a platform that made their lives easier.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, but it's a sneaky one, right? Like, where do you get the data? How do you get the data? Like, it was the guy knew the other guy, and that was where the data came from. But it is a good one if you can get hold of that kind of stuff. But, you know, some folks will set their mouth against it and not really want to change. So I don't know. You might have developers leave because the platform is no longer, you know, they liked the nitnoid details.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the metrics that are worth collecting, but that the value of that is kind of converting these numbers into, I guess, stories is a good way to put it, talking about products and marketing. Because it seems that managers are more willing to back or buy a story than a number. And I'm picking up on what Scott said earlier, that the last place you want to be is coming into a shared bucket where you're just managing services. If your platform's seen as this is a team that runs half a dozen tools, you may not be able to leverage a lot of, you know, good budget buy-in or manager backing to what you want to do. But if you're seen as the team that creates these stories, that might be a better place to be as far as the wider business goes. Yes. On that, in terms of making it a good story that you're selling, what does your team need? I mean, my personal bias, what do you do as far as support goes? How do you make it a good developer experience? How do your developers always have a positive thing to say when you measure that NPS score? What do you need to make that happen?
I think the engineering support is the most fundamental thing here, because if you build a good relationship with developers, if you change the optics that you really enable them and everything what you do is long-term sustainable, they can rely on you. It all boils down to the trust, right? And the more support you do, the more trust you get.
And go and watch them using the platform, right? Go and sit with them and watch them using it and see if they're experiencing problems and kind of like be close to it. Don't just wait for them to tell you what's not working, because people will kind of grind it out to get things done and they're busy. So they won't always be able to just give you this high quality gift of feedback. So go see.
That's like very proactive engagement.
Come down off the mountain, go talk to them, see what they're doing, find out what they need. And the expression I use is, if you come from the infrastructure space like I did, don't be the basement Gandalf. Don't be the guy that just hides away in a basement and waits for tickets. Go out and talk to folks. See what you can do to help them. And to your point about going and saying, hey, how can we help you, is a lot more powerful if you're willing to sit there with them and walk through it. And I think you can get a great deal of success when you devote a certain amount of your folks' time to be responsive. If you're operating in a Slack support channel and one of your folks who's doing toil reduction and automation type activities that might allow for context switching, also put that person in the support channel so that the developers at least feel heard, right? Oh, we see what's happening. Either you can help them immediately or you can immediately get in the queue, but the important thing is that they feel heard immediately.
Yeah, it's important to have the user focus groups and the sessions. One tactic that you could leverage if you don't necessarily have the ability to schedule those because of time capacity and constraints, try to pull the sprint retrospectives from product teams and see what teams are highlighting in terms of potential opportunities around, this is what got into my way. Obviously, you're gonna get a lot of noise from those, just reading the actual, retros, but the items that are likely gonna, bubble up to you are, and you can run those for a word cloud or something. Hey, see what are the themes that kind of, rise to the top, especially at scale. So maybe you're gonna get some specific kind of items that are true across large swaths across specific cohorts, or maybe it's a particular high level language in terms of framework. Let's call that the Java kind of, teams have this particular issue. How can we help them sort of avoid that? I think that's going to be very, very powerful. Obviously, the more time that you spend with actual end users face to face, talking to them, running for particular sessions, that's going to create the level of trust, the bonding. But if you need something at scale, particularly a massive large of groups, definitely try the sprint retrospective route to see if we can get specific themes that can emerge very quickly. And you can do both strategies at the same time. It's not an or statement.
And also one more thing, which is also important, is having a good landing zone for the platform in terms of user-facing documentation, as well as technical, architectural diagrams, so people understand inner workings if they are interested in this. They also have a good number of tutorials, getting started, so enough context, and that's how you can actually scale, so you don't have to repeat yourself every time and explain the same value proposition, the same approach to deploying an app. So it needs to be a quality work, and if this is not documented, it doesn't exist actually. So that's also something that needs to be allocated as a dedicated stream of work for the platform team next to the support activities.
I really like that, Bartek. One of the best examples of onboarding to a new tool, which is what a platform is, from a clarity perspective. If anyone here has ever built a Java application with Maven in 5 minutes, that page is short, sweet, to the point. It has everything you need on it to get started and to branch out. If you can build a simple document for your platform that any developer could go to and look at in the same way that Maven in 5 minutes does, with just a test project, that does a thing that gets deployed, right? That's the sort of documentation that you would hope you could develop, because it will really drive adoption. If it's simple, if it's well documented, if it's clear, you're not going to have the kinds of problems you'll have if you've got it spread across 20 pages of wiki and never updated.
Well, that makes sense. I know from a product perspective, we talk about like day 2 operations. We want to get someone able to deploy something, see it's working, have success on their first or second day of using a product. So same idea, I guess. Rather than a new developer coming in and trying to look through 20 wiki pages, if they've got one in a test project and they can get it working on the developer platform or portal you've got, the sooner they can do that, the sooner they're going to be engaged in and using your product or your platform over anything else. I mean, I understand as product providers coming from the CodeFresh and Octopus side, that's something that we focus on. We have the metrics around, but in terms of the IDP world, I think the same would play out. The sooner people have success in what you're sharing or build, the more invested they're going to be if they see it as the least friction to get their job done. There's a lot of value in that. As we start coming towards the end of our hour, just want to quickly check with you all. If people want to learn more about the best ways to do these intuitive developer platforms, if you could point them towards one next thing to do or to read or event to come to, what would that be? Where can they take the next steps?
All right, old school, Phoenix Project and the goal. Like, get yourself familiar. And I know that a lot of folks are kind of poo-pooing on the notion of flow and knowledge work, but the reality is that in many organizations, that's still where we are. And it is worthwhile to think about the sort of theory of constraints things that will drive productivity inside of a software development organization, and think about the ways that you can turn a platform into an enabling tool for that kind of an organization. Most of us work in that space. Aspirationally, we can get away from flow, but it's going to be a while. So I would say read the goal, read the Phoenix Project, and think about those two as kind of the baseline for where we are today and how to make things work in the world we're living in right now.
Great, thank you for that. Awesome. All right. Any other thoughts about the next steps people can do to learn more or to engage more or to keep learning?
I would recommend a few product-oriented resources, because usually that's the biggest area of opportunity for growth for anyone who's doing platform engineering. Try reading the Inspired, Empowered, and Transformed books by Marty Kagan. They are not necessarily going to be about platform engineering, but a lot of the core foundational principles of product management that you're going to need to make your platform as a product initially successful will be pretty much described in those 3 books. Some people online, if you search for it, they'll recommend you a particular cadence and sequence to read them, because Marty Kagan wrote them at particular points in his life. Try to search for what the right sequence is, especially with the Transform book that just came out earlier this year. So make sure that you read them in the right order.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Those are good books to dive into. All right, Steve, do you have any takeaway where people can go to learn more or to keep on engaging in how to do this well?
Yeah, I've got a couple of articles that I would love people to give me feedback on, actually, which we'll send some links out, I guess, to them. But I've got one which is talking about the decision flow of when to adopt platform engineering, which has been assembled based on discussions in the community. And I've also got one on the monk metrics, bringing that together and trying to explain it in some more detail. And I would love more feedback on that so that I can hone that and make that as useful as possible.
Brilliant. Well, we'll include those links and those papers in the email that goes out to anyone who's registered for the recording and on the YouTube clip itself when it makes its way there. And look forward to that feedback. Again, the more feedback we have from anyone who watches, we value it all. If you have any ideas, even if it's a thumbs up or down, do give them to us. And Bartek, do you have any next steps people can do to keep learning, or any sort of last minute insight to share?
Well, a lot has been said, and I really second the Phoenix project. And on top of my head, I think it's worth mentioning Accelerate, the impact of DevOps, and how this directly contributes to the business prosperity. And another interesting book that is maybe not necessarily related to platform engineering, and it's more about it's similar to team topologies. This is called Wiring the Winning Organization. I'm not sure if you heard about that book. It's about how different people can work together and why it's important to slow down. For example, there is a slowification technique, and many other interesting aspects outlined in this book. And apart from that, I would strongly recommend reaching out to folks in platform engineering community and just hear some real world stories, ask about their challenges, and that's probably the best way to digest information, at least in my case, to speak to people, be part of the community, ask questions, and just matter of time as you build better understanding around this subject.
Brilliant. Yes, one of the shout outs that I actually met everyone on is the Platform Engineering Slack. There is a combined Slack workspace about this. It's a great place for resources. Also, a shout out to people who want to learn more around the tooling side and other topics like this. Version to Main continues to be a series we'll put on. There's other events for both CodeFresh and Octopus you can sign up to with different topics. There's white papers or books like Steve writes that he wants more engagement with and feedback on. There's a bunch of other resources. Do connect, join the Slack community, follow the events, be part of the discussion. And in the last 4 minutes we have one quick fire question from the audience that's coming near the end of our session here. And this is a really good one. What's our advice as a panel on bringing in something like Backstage versus building something entirely custom? What's the quickest way to get started? What's the pros and cons?
It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to do minimum viable with a tool like Backstage. And it isn't that Backstage is hugely difficult. It's that Backstage requires ongoing operations. Whereas if you were building a MVP of a platform and the first thing you do is say 80% of my workloads are a specific Java framework and that's it, right? Like it's just Java, then why are you going to go build Backstage for something like that? You should probably be looking at the existing tooling you've got and making it more seamless for onboarding developers, and then working in a product focused way on what's the next, portion of the 20% that are left to build the next pipeline or the next set of deployment tooling that manages the infrastructure for you as well. So again, what's your scale? And how many folks will you have who can commit to owning the platform? Because when you have Backstage incorporated to that, it is going to require a couple of folks full time.
I'd add, Backstage is like the answer to a question. So you kind of have to work out what that question is before you can say whether Backstage is the correct answer. I think there's a temptation that we have sometimes in tech where something catches fire and we all want that thing. But it's worth just double checking before we head for Backstage that is the thing that solves our problem. Our existing stuff is like a barn find and it could be quite complete. Might just need a bit of repairing, or it might need a big new engine, right? We just need to check first before we do it.
I've got to remember the barn find. That's great.
Whereas it sounds like the wisdom around this is those discussions around the minimum viable platform where there's some thinking and articles we can read about this. But then as Steve's saying, it's about, is it quicker to re-engineer what you have into that? Or as Scott said, do you need a couple of full-time people to build it from scratch with Backstage, and are you resourced for it? Guess I was saying the whole discussion, a lot around these discussions does depend on where your organization is, what sort of workloads you're dealing with, and what sort of complexity of tooling you already have. And can you meet most of the workload with what you already have sitting on your shelf, or do you need to bring something new in? And I guess as a panel, we can't easily answer that, but we can certainly talk about it if you jump onto the Platform Engineering Slack or anything, the CodeTrash or Octopus events or webinars or similar. The discussion is always ongoing. You can find all of us in that Platform Engineering Slack, and you can certainly find Steve and I in future events that are hosted by CodeTrash and Octopus. So I think that brings us to the end of the hour. We will send out this recording to everyone who's registered. We'll include the same sort of links to resources in the YouTube clip. There'll be a bunch of things that we've talked about here if we want to go back and listen to that recording on YouTube and follow up on all the shout outs to resources and learning that our panels put forward. And as always, we look forward to engaging more, and we will see you for the next event that we have. Keep an eye on those event pages for what's interesting to you. And if you jump into the Slack channel, give us all a wave on the Platform Engineering Slack. I'll be happy to connect. Right, that said, thank you our panel for coming and our audience for attending. Appreciate the time you've all put into this. And we'll call it a wrap. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll catch you later.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the discussion.